What am I saying again?
This is MPW,
MPW.
the podcast
with your host, Xylo Aria.
Cool.
A podcast about music production
for the everyday musician.
where we learn from experienced studio engineers and each other.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the MPW podcast. I'm your host, Xylo Aria, and today we are talking to the lovely Poppy Reid. So Poppy is the managing editor at Rolling Stone Australia and also the Brag Media, which includes Tone Deaf, The Brag, the Industry Observer, Don't Bore Us. So yeah, we're really lucky to have her with us today. So hello, Poppy, and thank you for sharing this hour with us. How are you doing?
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No worries, no worries. So you said you're kind of in the middle of a few deadlines at the moment. So is it always that hectic for you, or is it kind of ebbs and flows? How does it work?
I would say it's almost always this hectic. When we first launched, like a year after we first launched, we launched this thing called the Brag Bible, and it's essentially our culture document, and we use it as our kind of our true north as staff. This is, it has our values in it, and it shows like what we as a business are all about and what's important to us. And we also send it to people who are thinking about coming on board with us. It's a really great way to see whether they align with our culture. Some people are like, it's actually not what I'm about. This isn't what I'm seeking in a job. And other people are like, oh, I'm going to thrive in this environment. Thank you for sending me this. And in that document, it says, it's always crazy town. Like that's actually a line that's in our Brag Bible. And I live it every week. Yep, it's true.
Okay, that's excellent. Well, it's good that you're not, trying to sugarcoat it and things, and you're kind of telling everyone exactly how it is. So that's great. And I would love to hear, before we get started into the music journalism and pitching for press and things, a bit about your career and, where did things start in music for you and how did you end up where you are today?
Yeah, well, I grew up in New Zealand, and when I was young, I used to write a lot of stories. Like when I was really little, just used to write, short stories and stuff like that. So I knew I wanted to write. And then I moved over to Australia when I was 15 with my mum and my sister. And that was when I really got into music. And I really got into like pop punk music. I was a bit of an emo. Love being an emo still. You can't really ever get rid of that part of yourself. And I was studying journalism at uni, at Griffith Uni on the Gold Coast, and I pretty much made every assignment music related. And one of the reasons was because I love music so much, but I cannot play music. I can't sing. I'm not a musically talented person. I'm just, the fangirl, like a really, really proud fangirl. So yeah, I would make all of my assignments about music. And then when I finished uni, I was just looking for a job in music journalism, because to me, music journalism is such a beautiful sector, because you get to tell the story of one of the most fascinating people in the world who are musicians. The fact that you do what you do, just it amazes me. I look at albums I listen to albums and I listen to songs, and I'm like, how the heck did they move me so much with one line or one bar? Like it's just, I just find it so fascinating. So to be able to tell stories about musicians and help get their story across, it's such a privilege to be able to do. And I think that artists don't have that many opportunities to show exactly who they are to their fans and their audiences. And they obviously have their music, and then they have their live show, and they and their albums and interviews that they do. But in terms of really offering more context around their artistry, music journalism does that. And I think that that's a huge responsibility, and that's why I love it so much. So do you remember Faster Louder? I don't know if you remember. It turned into Junkie, the behemoth that is Junkie today. It started off as this music website called Faster Louder, and they had a forum on there, and that forum would have job opportunities and things like that. And there was an opportunity to do an internship in Sydney, and I was living in Brisbane at the time. And so I moved to Sydney, and I worked for free for 6 months at the Music Network, and then was offered a role on the editorial team I think I was editorial assistant to start, and then I think I worked up to associate editor or something like that, and then became editor after a while, and then I was there for 7 years all up. And my now boss, Luke Gergis, launched his own media company and asked me to come and help run it with him.
That's awesome how you've kind of built this path for yourself. And deciding to move from Brisbane, you were saying, to Sydney for something that I guess you might not have known really where that was leading to. It was sort of an unpaid internship. What was going through your mind at that time, and did it feel like, a bit of an unknown, or did you feel like, no, that was the right path?
You know what's so weird? I don't see myself as an extremely courageous person. I don't really see myself as the huge risk taker in my circles that I'm in. However, when I moved, there was no part of me that was scared. Like, I was just like, well, this is an opportunity, right? Like, even though I'm going to be working for free, what a great opportunity to just delve into the world of music media publishing. So no, I didn't have any fear, but I did arrive and I didn't have anywhere to live, and I didn't know anyone, and I didn't have a job, and I just figured that all out on the way. It was all right. It all worked out. So it's that weird thing, like, where you kind of just have to trust in the universe a little bit and go, okay, I'm handing it over, sending out good vibes only. Hopefully that's what I get back.
Yeah. I love that. And yeah, I mean, it's such a thing that probably, external to you, everyone was like, oh, that's a really big step. And I assume you would have heard that from people of like, oh my gosh, aren't you scared or anything like that? And you just went ahead and made it work. And so many people that we've spoken to have taken these sort of leaps, which to them didn't really feel like a leap. It just felt like, the right thing to do or the next step. But you can sometimes hear from other people's perspective that it feels really scary. So I guess it is a courageous thing to do, whether you see it that way or not. So that's awesome. And it started there, and it has obviously kind of been an incredible journey for you. And
it's one of those examples where I think it's important not to ask too many other people for advice on big moments in your career. Like, I think if I had sat down with a bunch of people and said, I'm thinking about moving to another state, another city, and I don't have a job or anywhere to live, and what do you think? I think a lot of people might have put a bit of reality into me, which is that's a bit scary. What's the plan, kind of thing. And I think it's important just to kind of follow your gut in a way and just go. And also, I have a beautiful relationship with my mum, where I knew that if it all messed up, I could just go home to mum and live with her again, and she wouldn't be upset with me. And that's a really privileged thing to have. Not everyone has that. Not everyone has a stable home life that they can essentially go home to if it all messes up. So I'm very lucky. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really, really good point that you mentioned, that, we can feel like we need to get the approval of a bunch of people before we make that decision. But at the end of the day, it's only you that's in that mind frame, and only you probably know what's right for you better than every other person on the street. So that's good. And that family support, I guess you can't replace that with anything else. So it's lucky to have that. So thank you for sharing your story with us. And it's really great to see how you've got to what you're doing now. So a little bit about our topic today, which is pitching to journalists for your music. And as you mentioned, as an artist, you maybe don't have all the different ways to talk about your music, and that's where music journalism does that for the artist. So how much difference does it make, firstly, if you're an artist, if you're pitching for yourself or if you're pitching through a manager? Because this seems to be something that a lot of people think that they need to have, a manager before they reach out to journalists. So what would you say about that? That is if I'm going to be completely honest, and I think it's important to be truly transparent about my role and how that works, and how it might be similar to other music editors as well. We get a lot of emails.
Mhm.
You know, I think that myself and Tyler, who's our Rolling Stone editor, timed it one day, and it's like about 100 every hour. Most of them are press releases that come through. We cover a lot of things outside of music. Brag isn't music. Rolling Stone obviously covers TV and film and all those other culture and social issues and things like that. So there's a lot of publicists that have our email, which is great because it means we get all the information in one place. But it also means that when we receive an email from a manager or a publicist who we have a relationship with, who knows our publications, we're going to read that from start to finish, probably with a more keen eye than we are from an artist that we don't know who's reaching out. And there's ways that you can reach out as an artist where you have more luck, where you're more likely to have your email read carefully as opposed to just, you know, the subject line or the first couple of lines. So I can go through that if you like. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you are a solo, an independent artist who doesn't have a team around you, you need to be very careful when you're pitching in what you include and how you pitch, because the relationships that editors have with publicists is actually quite incredible. The publicists curate the pitches that they send to these music editors based on what they know works well on those publications and what those publications offer. So my huge tip to anyone that does not have the luxury, and it is a luxury to have a publicist or a manager, because, you know, the fees related to that I know are quite high, and as they should be. Publicists work arse off, sorry to swear, but it's true. I know a few music publicists, and you know, they do God's work for sure. If you don't have that, then when you are pitching to music media, my biggest advice is to curate your pitch. So say you're pitching to Tone Deaf, which is one of our publications, you would go on the Tone Deaf site, see what we publish quite often, and then pitch accordingly. So you will see on Tone Deaf that we do premieres, which is when, you know, we show our readers a first listen, but we don't do them that often. And the reason why we don't do them that often is because they don't track that well. So if you type in premiere, you won't see, you know, ones happening every day or every week even. You'll see that they're quite sporadic. But you will see that we do quite a lot of Q&A interviews called Get to Knows. And you will see that we have a thing called Video of the Week every week. And we also have a thing called Record of the Week. So you might look at that and go, okay, I'm going to email Poppy and I'm going to say, can I please have either a Video of the Week, a Record of the Week, or a Get to Know? And here are all the details that you need to make that happen, so that I'm not going, oh yeah, sure, let's do a Video of the Week. Hey, do you have the video link and maybe a press shot and maybe a little bio about you and a couple of quotes about the video and streams and assets and all that stuff. You don't want the music editor to chase you. You should just provide all the information. I've literally had a couple of independent artists reach out and say, hey, we've never talked before. I know that you do Get to Knows on Tone Deaf, and I'm actually taking the liberty of writing my own based on the questions that I saw online. And here is my Q&A. Here is my press shot. Here's my video to embed. That's what I'm actually promoting. And here's a bit of information about me. And it's all in the one email. And I've just gone, this person's an angel. I love the music. I think our readers are going to love it. And I don't even have to go back to them. When I replied, I went back to them with the link. And I said, we just popped it all up. Thanks for the info. Here it is live. So if you are an indie artist, you've just got to make the editor's job as easy as possible, which sounds crap because it's not your job to make our job easy, but it definitely helps.
Yeah, no, that's really good to know and really helpful. And would you, because then there's the other question of including too much information in your email. If you've got, you know, a really long thing where they've written up the whole article, but maybe, you know, when you open the email, you're like, oh gosh, I don't have time for this huge chunk of text. How would you recommend someone get past that?
Oh, that's where like attachments could be good, right? So you could say, you know, you could be a very quick email to say, hey, I would love to have a song you need to know on Rolling Stone Australia, which is something that we do, that Tyler chooses. And attached is the press release about the song, and also attached is my press shot. And if you want my bio, I've linked that here, or I've attached that here too. So the actual email is, you know, quite brief, but I still have all the assets. Yeah, because I know what you mean. Sometimes you open an email and you're like, oh, I need to make some time for this one. This looks like a bit of a long read. And then you put it off until, you know, it's, you know, suddenly Saturday and you don't want to be working too much on a Saturday.
Definitely. And then, because you hear sometimes from people as well that with attachments, they've, you know, some journalists feel like their inbox is getting too big and they're kind of running out of room. Is there like a size that you would recommend, or is it better to link to a Google Drive or something like that?
Oh yeah, Google Drive is great. I mean, you obviously want to give them the high res image just in case their specs are quite high res on their site. There's nothing worse than getting an image that's perfect but not being able to put it on your site because it'll be all pixelated. So yeah, definitely Google Drive is the way to go. I know I use Superhuman Email, which is this it's a paid email service, and the whole point of it is to help you get to inbox zero every day. And so with that, you get, like, you know, it's kind of like tons of room. You don't have to worry about your inbox getting too full. But for anyone that wants to like hack the inbox zero, Superhuman, it's my little savior. So good.
Okay. Oh, that sounds excellent. And so say there is an artist and they've got all this stuff, they've done their research, put everything on a Google Drive or wherever they're putting all this information. Then what should they do as far as timeline goes up to the release, and how much time should you give the journalists?
Yeah, I mean, because the news cycle is so fast, right? And if you book something well in advance and we say we're going to do it, then we're going to do it. We stick to our word. If you let us know the day of or the day before, I might look at the next 2 days and just go, we just don't have capacity for this. This is way too full on. But you don't want to ask way in advance. You don't want to say, hey, I don't have any of the assets, but I'm releasing a song next year. Just want to let you know, I'll follow you up then. You know, like, you might not even get a reply for that because people go, okay, cool. Well, they'll reach out when they have all the assets. So my advice would be reach out when you have all the assets, even if it's an unlisted link. So you might obviously be pushing a YouTube video that isn't even live yet. So send that link and be like, this will be live on this date. And if you're okay with the story or the article or the content piece not going live on the day that you would like it to go live, you should really mention that, because, you know, if someone says like, hey, we've got the song out next Monday, can you cover it on the Monday? And we don't have capacity on the Monday, I think, well, cool, we've missed the boat and sorry. But if they say, look, it's out Monday, but, you know, if you could publish any time from Monday, whether it's a week from there, 2 weeks from there, a month from there, we'd appreciate it. Then that's going back on my list to pitch into the team.
Okay. Yep. That's some great tips there. And so would you say that's maybe like a couple of weeks before release, or like a month before? Or is it just as soon as you have everything that you need?
Yeah, I mean, if you have everything you need and it's a month before, I would probably say that's a bit too far out for online. If you're pitching for a review in our magazine, however, which is quarterly, and we have to go to print, this is wild, but we have to go to print a month before the magazine hits stands and is with our subscribers because of the distribution and printing and all of that stuff. So if it's print, well than a month before for our magazine, which is quarterly. If it's for online, you know, a week before, a couple of days before is totally fine, as long as you've got all those assets.
Okay, cool. Good to know. And if you don't get a response, how often would you say that people should follow up, or should you follow up?
I love a follow-up.
Yeah.
Like I kind of need a follow-up sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, thank you for following up with me. Gosh, this one, I just totally spaced on this one, or I missed this one. So really appreciate a follow-up on my end. I would say if you follow up 3 times, you know, so that's you've sent your email and then you've followed up 3 times after that, you're just not going to get a reply. Like, just cut your losses. And that's also around, you know, there is a real it's a good idea to manage your expectations when you're pitching to media as well. Like instead of doing the spray and pray approach, which is I'm just going to send this to everyone. I'm not going to personalize it. I'm not going to curate it. You're less likely to get pickup than if you choose 5 to 7 media publications and curate each one. You know, like this pitch is for Poppy for these publications, and this pitch is to Nastasia for music feeds, you know, and you really curate those based on what goes well on those sites or what you've seen them cover. You're much more likely to get a response.
Okay, cool. And are there any things that you would definitely say to avoid, like any huge pet peeves that you have when you get contacted?
Yeah, I do actually have a couple. So my biggest pet peeve is when people send me the information and then at the end they say, let me know what you think. And I don't know what to do with that. They haven't said, can I have a song you need to know? Can I have this? Can I have an interview? Can I have a news article? Like they haven't actually told me what they want. And they've also asked what I think, which actually isn't important. It's important what our readers think and what goes well based on what I've seen them engage with. So it's best to, you could say, you know, like, tell me what you think, but then definitely ask for what you want is my thing. Other things to avoid would be, don't contact like the head of the company. So if people hit up Luke, our CEO, and say, hey, I've got this press release, can you get it covered? You know, best to do your research and work out that Luke is the CEO and I'm the editor. And because you're just less likely to get a response. Luke is busy. He's a million miles an hour, that man. Like he doesn't have time to respond to things that relate to my role. And another pet peeve, don't assume someone's gender is a good one, and try and spell their name correctly. If you're copy and pasting from another pitch that you have sent a competitor email, make sure that you've changed those details. You know, I've seen a lot of emails that say like, you know, I would love to see if we could get placement here on NME, or would love to see if we could get placement here on music feeds. And what you're doing is basically giving that editor free rein to not reply to you. And understandably so too. Another thing that happens, and I don't understand why this is a tactic, but some people will, when they follow up, they'll say, if you don't reply by this date, we're going to pitch it to name competitor here. Which, I kind of understand it because, you know, they are on deadline and I get that. Just say like, I do need this was an exclusive offer, and if I don't hear from you, I will pitch elsewhere. Like you don't need to name the competitor because, you know, like it's kind of, it's finicky. Maybe that's just a personal preference of mine that I see as a pet peeve. What else? Yeah, just when the pitch isn't curated accordingly. Like you would never pitch a hip hop magazine, an EDM artist, although there's a lot of crossover with EDM and hip hop. What's a better example? You'd never pitch like a country magazine, an EDM artist, say. Like just kind of knowing your audience and showing your research as well.
Okay. So many great points there. Thank you, Poppy. And I'm sure, you know, a few people are guilty of doing, maybe accidentally or not. So really good things to be mindful of.
I did think of one more.
Sorry, go for it.
I got one more. Okay. Don't be really salacious with your subject line. You know, don't say things like you'll never guess what happens in this music video or something like that. It's like, it's not BuzzFeed. And I know it seems kind of obvious, but this stuff does happen. It's not BuzzFeed. They're really good at, you know, doing those kind of listicles and that kind of thing, and getting you to click on really amazing content. The hours that I have wasted on BuzzFeed personally, you know, explain in the subject line exactly what you want. Like a few of my favorite subject lines are record of the week, artist name, album title. I know that I am being pitched for our record of the week spot for this album and this artist. You know, just make it very clear.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Also very good point. Thank you for mentioning that one as well. And one thing that you mentioned about, you know, contacting the right person in the publication and not emailing Luke for something that should go to you. Would you recommend that people contact specific journalists that they're trying to pitch to, or if there's like a generic email on the website, to go there instead? What do you think is best?
Yeah, if you can get the actual journalist, so say, a publication, some publications are really siloed in terms of they have their political journalist, and then they have their music journalist, and then they might have their social issues journalist. If you can get the correct journalist email, that's what you should go for. A lot of those info at or hello at, a lot of those just don't go to the right people, to be honest. Like we have a hello at the brag, and that goes to our partnerships team, because we looked at a lot of those emails that came through, and most of them were about people wanting to book a campaign with us or spend for advertising. So that just goes to them. It doesn't even come to me.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. And another thing that, I think as all musicians, we can probably feel this at some stage, is taking the lack of response really personally, and then kind of feeling really dejected about everything that we're trying to do and feeling really discouraged. So what would you say to someone who's feeling that way?
To artists who don't receive a reply from media publications or journalists, I would almost encourage them to expect it, just because, you heard me talk earlier about how we get around 100 emails per hour. It's a lot to go through. Things get missed. If you do follow up 3 times and you don't get a reply, that's a really crappy feeling. And I know what that's like, to really, kind of spend a lot of time on an email and craft it in a way that you think is going to really be exciting, and just not get a response. The amount of emails that I sent to Rolling Stone before we operated the publication, when I was when I was at the Music Network and doing a bit of freelancing, and you just craft these emails thinking like, this could be it, it's amazing, but don't stop trying ever. Like I eventually was asked to do, after multiple emails hassling Rod Yates, who was the previous editor of Rolling Stone Australia. I was asked to do an album review, and then a couple more, and then I was asked to do a feature, and you just can't give up. And also know that there are a lot of publications out there as well. There's blogs popping up everywhere, and maybe that will really help with your pitch with the publication that you really want to get into. Maybe if a couple of smaller blogs that are run by one journalist, out of their home, if you get a couple of things with them, a couple of runs on the board essentially, then that could lead to you eventually being picked up by the publication that you're really into. But also, media is not the be all and end all in the making of a music career. Like there's just no way that you should think that being rejected by a media publication means a rejection of your music, or a reason to give up in any way or form on your music career, because as we've seen, it's fans who make those rules in terms of what gets heard and how often it gets heard. And there are so many communities online where music is being shared and talked about and fawned over that are not related to a music site. There are Reddit threads dedicated to artists and genres that you might fit into. There are Facebook groups dedicated to the types of music that you make, so there is definitely so many other opportunities for you.
That's such a good point, to mention as well, because I think it's so easy for artists. It's such a vulnerable state to be in when you go and pitch your music, and it can be really easy to make that feel like a rejection of your art, which it's not at all. So that's really helpful, Poppy. I think it gives people a good idea on exactly what approach to take for the best chance of success. But I also really like your point of maybe not expecting a reply being your default, and then if you do get one, it's a bonus. So maybe that helps to see it that way. So coming to your career, I guess, what would you say has been the biggest highlight for you so far?
Well, like I mentioned, Rolling Stone was always a publication that I wanted to work for and be aligned with. And once I started writing for it, and once I had a long form feature published in it, I literally thought, well, that's it. I've hit my life's goal. I can die happy. And that's the cap. And then someone who I used to work with, Nathan Jolly, he said, I think you should be editor of Rolling Stone. I think that you would do a great job of that. And I was in my 20s at the time, and he said, you should do it before you're 30. I think that'd be cool. And it's so weird when someone believes in you in a way that you never thought possible for yourself. When someone says it would be cool and I think that you would be good at it, like that, from someone that you really greatly respect as well, there's something shifted in me when he said that. And it was the idea of possibility. Like, really? Do you think I could do that? And then I think something planted in my brain of like, well, let's just try and manifest that. Let's really try and think about let's imagine myself in that role, and let's imagine what I could possibly do if I was in the big chair. And then when I joined the Bragg Media, and Luke started by acquiring publications. He acquired Tone Deaf, he acquired the Bragg, and we launched the Industry Observer, and we launched Don't Bore Us. I planted the seed with him and said, hey, if you want to acquire a brand, Rolling Stone would be really cool. I would love to work with Rod Yates and Matt Coit, who were the editors at the time. And so he started discussions with them. He started discussions with the previous global shareholder. And then when that shareholder sold to PMC, Penske Media Corporation, which is the current company that owns most of the rights to Rolling Stone globally, he started conversations with them. And that was about a 2-year process, just like starting those conversations and then it coming to fruition. So that's definitely like a highlight, becoming managing editor of one of my favorite publications that I've just been reading since I was young. And just like looking through the publisher's page, which says like who the contributors are and who the sub editors are and all of that, and going through those names and just like going, how cool would it be to have my name in there? And now it is.
That's so exciting. And it's really cool to hear how that played out, starting from a little seed being planted in your head and kind of making that happen somehow. And I do have a big belief in like manifestation and things. I think mainly because just thinking about it as a possibility just changes how much or how hard you work towards it, I think, and there's a difference between just dreaming about it and not actually doing anything. But when you actually feel how great it would be to be that role, to be in that role and kind of what you could contribute, it just increases your motivation so much. So I think, what you were saying of kind of seeing yourself in that role probably had a huge amount to deal with it, I would say.
Yeah, totally. Just that kind of, you're right. It's not dreaming. It's like imagining the steps that would need to happen to get you there as well. And thinking really, pragmatically about it too. Yeah. Do you do that? Do you do like you imagine yourself doing something, or do you have things that goals that you've achieved in your life that started by a bit of manifestation?
Most definitely. So I'm a huge fan of different ways of goal setting, and I have my more practical goal setting of like the next month. So always at the start of the month, goal setting for the month is a big thing that I do. And then the longer term, which is a bit more of that dreaming element, but it's not just a dream, it's really kind of putting yourself in that position and thinking, if all of these happened, how good would that feel? And exactly what would I be doing in that position? And so I'm definitely a big fan of that. And I do try and do that. So it's great to see when some things come to happen and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought about that. But sometimes I think you forget as well. You're like, oh yeah, this just feels like the next step, without realizing that it probably was a big deal for you a few years ago.
Yeah. It's so important to reflect on that stuff, isn't it? And kind of own those wins for a bit, and have that gratitude for what you already have too. That's a big thing that I try and do, is just go, kind of imagine that I don't have what I have. That's one of my little secrets to happiness, is if I imagine that I don't have it, then I'm so grateful that I do. And then it makes you, because it's important to not always be trying to live somewhere else, always be looking at the whole grass is greener thing isn't always great. It's great to have ambitions and great to have things that you want to achieve, but if you're not appreciative of where you're at, then what's the point?
Yes, for sure. And the book, I don't know if you read The Resilience Project. I read that about a year ago, and that really talked about that a lot, just seeing people, especially, my background is from India and going back there, and I see so many people with very, very little, but they're so happy. And that just makes me, every time reflecting on that, thinking, my gosh, what am I complaining about? If these people can enjoy their life and make the most of every day, then I have no reason really to be complaining. But that's not to say, I think it's also okay to also, sometimes just not feel so good. Anyway, now we're kind of going down a separate
I agree.
rabbit hole.
Yeah, you've got to check yourself sometimes.
Yeah, no, for sure. But celebrating your wins, I think, which is kind of what we were talking about a little bit, is such a nice thing, because you can always forget what you've kind of achieved, and then just be like, oh yeah, that's the next thing. Now let's move on to the next goal, without appreciating all the work that you've done up to that point.
I was able to interview Keith Urban for the latest magazine that's out now, that he's on the cover.
Yeah.
And he's one of the most humble people I've ever met. He's just, that man is so appreciative of everything that he has, and he is just stoked on life. If I'm going to go to his concert when he comes, I think it's next year. And, he said something about, because we did one of the interviews was at Kudos Bank Arena, and it was empty, and it was where he's going to perform 3 times when he comes back. And I said, how do you make sure the people up in those seats, and I pointed right up to the ceiling, like, how do you make sure that they, have a good time? That's really far away from the stage, isn't it? And he's like, I know what it's like to be in that seat. He's like, I know what he said, everyone coming to a concert has a story and a journey of how they got there. And it's my job to make sure that they get their money's worth, no matter what that cost is. And he said that he goes out on stage imagining that he has an audience of people who have their arms crossed and are looking at him like, prove to me that I should put my arms down, I should uncross my arms and listen to you and pay attention to you and respect you. It's like he's got this thing called beginner's mind, where he always likes to start from like a clean slate. And that's what that is. He comes out on stage pretending that he hasn't already won them over. There's screaming people, there's women with signs, there's people that are just so excited that he just walked out there, and he pretends that he has to win them over every night. And, that's that whole appreciation from his end. It's really incredible. And the other thing that he does around beginner's mind is his studio has no awards in it. He's won 4 Grammys, all of these things. I think he's like 20 multi-platinum hits or something like that, crazy. And he's got no plaques, no awards in his studio. And he needs to go into that feeling like he's making his very first album all the time.
That's really cool. I mean, it's that would be such a tough thing to do. I mean, going to the audience and pretend that they're not into your music. I feel like people are often doing the opposite to try and kind of get themselves psyched up. But that's an incredible way to do it.
That's what drives him.
Yeah, wow. So talking a bit about challenges then, Poppy, what would you say has been the most challenging part of your career, and how have you overcome that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that have been quite challenging over my career. One of them that sticks out is, the move from the Music Network to the Bragg Media was such an exciting decision for me. It was, I'd been at the Music Network for 7 years, but I'd only managed one staff member there. At the end, after the business was sold off, it was literally just myself, one other staff member, and some freelancers. I think it was one freelancer that I was commissioning articles from. And then I came over to the Bragg Media, and we had about 20 staff to start. And that I had never managed that many people. I had never kind of been in a position where I was looked to make decisions for multiple publications. It was really overwhelming. I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned from those mistakes, thank goodness. And one of the big lessons that I learned as a manager is that your staff, the staff that I have, they really crave, and rightly so, transparency. They just want to know where they stand, how they're doing in their role, and how they're impacting the business. They really want to know like how they personally are impacting our day-to-day. And that was really difficult for me to do on an individual level when there was a lot of people, and I was still figuring out the role and everything. So now we have a lot of systems in place and structures, and I don't manage as many people. We're kind of siloed off. We've kind of gone down in staff, and we have separate sections of the business now that are just a lot more concentrated, which is great. We had a whole video team previously. We don't do video anymore in-house. We outsource that whenever we need, which is, means less staff. And I'm still learning. I'm still figuring it out. But that was a huge challenge to go into this business where in a role where, to be completely honest, if I had have seen the job description for that role, I would never have put my hand up.
Okay. So how did you end up there if you didn't kind of know what was involved really?
I know. I just said yes. So Luke called me and he said, I'm starting this business and I'd like you to come and run it with me. And I said, yeah, cool. And then he was like, oh, we should probably do an interview. And I was like, yeah, definitely. And so I came to the office, and we sat and we talked about plans and his vision, and I really got it. And I really felt the same about how, if I was going to lead a company like this, that would be my mission too. And so we aligned on a lot of things. And then we worked out what salary would be, all of that stuff. And they said, okay, cool, I'll send you over the contract. And the contract had the job description. So I'd already said yes. So when I see this job description and I think, there's no way I can do this. I don't have any experience. I had no experience with budgets and all that kind of thing. Yeah. And, I don't know my way around an Excel sheet in a way that I should, given my role. But thankfully, Luke supported me a lot and gave me a lot of training, and I'm now at a much better standard. And we also have someone in the business who's a whiz at spreadsheets. So I definitely use him a lot. That's Dan. So it's like it really does feed into the research around the difference between males and non-males when applying for a role, where apparently the research says that, if males can do 50% of what's on the job description, they'll go for it, whereas non-males, it's more like they need to do about 90% for them to say yes, that they'll do it. Yeah. I'm glad I didn't see it. Otherwise I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe it happened for the best that it was that way, and you didn't see the description before. But no, that's great to hear how you kind of overcame those challenges of starting this new role, because it sounds like a huge change in what you were doing, and working it out as you went and learning from your mistakes, which you mentioned. I think people seem so important about making mistakes, but I guess that is how you learn. So
totally. And also, like, mistakes are important if they're ambitious mistakes, like little tiny mistakes, those are things where you've got to learn them a couple of times, and if you keep making them, then maybe you're not quite in the right space. But if you're trying new different things outside your lane, then you are growing. And of course, like if you try something completely different that you've never done before and you don't make a mistake, like, oh my goodness, are you like a heightened human being or something? Like, I don't get that. So I think it's really important to make ambitious mistakes.
Yeah. No, for sure, for sure. And what advice would you have for someone starting out their career in music journalism?
Do lots and lots and lots of writing and even more reading. Like, look, you want to have your own voice, and of course, but, really read voraciously the editors that you love the work of. I have an app called Audm, which is AUDM, and it's just a paid app that has all of the articles from some of my favorite publications like Rolling Stone, The Atlantic, New Yorker, New York Times, and it reads the stories to me. And it's not a robot, it's someone that's actually read the story and recorded it, which means that I can ingest more articles because I can listen to articles while I'm out for a walk or whatever. And that has definitely helped improve my writing. I'm still improving, my God. Like, I've definitely still have things that I'm like that are out there in the world that I'm not proud of, but they're a sign of me growing as a writer. And also, I would say, don't worry about not having the job that you absolutely want. So say you want to be a journalist who does a lot of photography with your journalism or does a lot of video interviews. Do that stuff anyway. Like, start a blog, start a Medium page, start an IGTV channel, a YouTube channel, a TikTok channel, and interview artists that, are maybe a little bit more emerging, that you can get that content out there on, like just do the role without having the role is basically what I'm saying.
Okay. Cool. No, great advice there. So thank you for that. Well, that takes us to the end, Poppy. So thank you so much for sharing all of your kind of insights, really useful for artists and budding journalists. So you've got your deadline to get to, so I will let you get back to your day. But thank you for spending this time with us.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate even being asked, and I'm so appreciative of what you're doing. We talked before we started hitting record about what, how you want more women in the production field and more non-males in the production field. And I just think that is so important. This industry needs a lot more representation, a lot more diversity, and you're tackling that issue head on. So that's awesome. Thank you.
No worries. Doing our best. All right. Thank you, Poppy. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.